Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. Hi, I'm Michael.
This is Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
We are back for another bonus episode.
Yeah, so this time we are going to do a book talk challenge. So for those of you unfamiliar, book talk is just essentially TikTok, but the book version, you can go in on TikTok and pretty much follow whatever you want. And we've landed obviously on BookTok. So it is a book talk challenge that we found and that we're going to do over podcast instead of a TikTok. So it's going to be a little bit differently, and we'll put our own little spin on it just to make it more presentable in a podcast form.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out some of these categories, and we're going to tell you which book for us each one of these categories fits into. Fair warning up front, there are going to potentially be spoiler alerts for any of the books we mentioned. So if one of us says the title of a book that you'd really like to read, maybe skip ahead 30 seconds or a minute so you don't get that spoiler, because spoilers are fair game in this bonus episode. So first category, show me a book you would sell a kidney to be able to read again for the first time.
And remember, we're not showing.
Yeah, we're not showing. We're telling. Tell me about a book you would sell a kidney to be able to read again for the first time. And number one, there's no book I would actually sell a kidney to read again for the first time. But the book that I picked for this was Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. It's one of my favorite books. I've read it multiple times. And the reason I chose it for this, and spoiler alert now for Fight Club, is the massive twist in the book where you find out that the narrator is actually Tyler Durden. And it's a total mind, messes with your mind. And yeah, so to experience that twist again, I think would be really cool, because I remember how much that broke my brain the first time. So
mine would be the Diviner series by Liba Bray. It's a supernatural series that takes place in 1920s Manhattan, and it follows a group of young adults who discover that they have special abilities, and they have to use these abilities to combat, things that go bump in the night. So it's kind of like a horror. It's a horror. It's horror-ish.
It's a new genre.
Yeah, it's horror. It's a new genre. I made it up. You're welcome. Patent it right here, right now.
It's a hybrid of horror and astrological things. So you'll get your horoscope while being scared.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. But it's supernatural too, so keep that in mind. But it's still relatively young adult. I just think this series is severely underrated. I feel like a lot of people haven't heard of these series. And there are 4 books in the series, and the first one is decently good, but they just keep getting better after that. And I just fell in love with all the characters. The cast of the characters are really super diverse. There's POCs and LGBTQ plus characters. The plot is really amazing. Like I said, really pretty creepy. But I read Stephen King, so I don't find it that creepy. But I know a lot of people who do find stuff like this creepy. They found this pretty creepy. And then just what the characters deal with was done really well. And I feel like it mirrors kind of what we're dealing with currently as a society. So I thought it was done really well. And I just would like to reread it because of all the twists and turns that it does, and just relearning about these amazing characters.
So I chose... So I was torn. So every single question, I just wanted to say the Harry Potter series. And that's just because it's a big part of my love of books and how I, got started. And so anyway, I could have chosen that because that would be amazing to read. Not necessarily the first book again for the first time, but just the series, because I didn't know we were allowed to do series, but then Barbara just did. So I guess...
Oh, minor series, my bad.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So anyway, I decided, okay, which ones have really good plot twists that I would like to relive. And I was also torn between The Girl on the Train by Paul Hawkins or Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I really liked both of those. I liked that's kind of my genre, my fave. And so just the different twists that happen with those. And I just remember them being really big page turners. And I think I was up till 2 a.m. the night before an interview, finishing Girl on the Train. So if I could go back and reread those, I think I would. I don't know that I would sell my kidney to read anything, like Michael said. Maybe Harry Potter.
Oh, those are 2 very, very twisty books. The Diviner is really good too. All good choices. So now tell me about a book you were terrified of reading, but once you finally did, it turned out to be amazing.
So my initial thought wasn't terrified, like spooky, like, ooh, goes bump. And then it was more like intimidated to read, I guess. And so, again, my first thought was Harry Potter, because at the time I was a kid and it was a really long book. And then by the time I decided I was going to read it, several books had come out. So I'm like, man, that's a lot of reading. So I was intimidated, but obviously I was really glad I read it. And then as far as like the book that had the most fear behind it, because it got so much hype, was It by Stephen King. And I was scared to read that, like legitimately scared, just because I'm like, I'm going to have nightmares because I read at night. So, but then I read it and it turned out to be amazing, but also terrifying. So,
So I also took it as not terrified, like literally scared of reading a book, but more just intimidated by reading books, as far as maybe like length or how many there are in the series. And since I don't have an issue with length, I actually enjoy reading larger books. Well, if it has good content. If it's like 1,000 pages of just worthlessness, I'm not going to enjoy that. But normally I'm not intimidated by length of a book. I never have been, not even as a kid, really. I enjoyed really thick books even as a child. I like them thick.
I was just going to say that.
I beat you to the punch.
Parental advisory.
Thick with 2 C's.
Yeah, 2 C's. So that's what I picked mine by, not necessarily scared, because I don't think I've ever been scared, like literally scared in reading a book. But so mine is, and once again, I apologize, Marner series. It's the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And I was just terrified to read this just due to the sheer amount of books in the series. There's a lot of them. And I don't think I realized how many books were in the series when I picked up the first book. I don't even think I even realized it was part of a series when I picked it up, because that tends to happen to me. I will pick up a book and then be like, oh no, it's a series. And I tend to read a lot of series because of that. So I wanted to look up how many pages the whole series had, and it's 4,316 pages. So that's a lot.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
believe there's 8 books.
Pretty short book then.
Right. It's 8 books in the series. I think 2 of them are like half books or like novellas or whatever they're called. And I think maybe like a short story or something like that as well. So it's a large series. So that's why I was intimidated. But the series incorporates like a lot of themes from multiple genres, like dark fantasy, science fantasy, horror, and Western. Look, I can say horror now, guys. And it's about a gunslinger and his quest towards a tower, the nature of which is both physical and metaphorical. So I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how he weaved the different themes throughout the different books. The first book is actually very short compared to the rest. The rest of the books are extremely long. And I believe the first book, he also, when it first came out in like the 80s, it's changed quite a bit since then. And I definitely recommend it if you don't mind slugging through 4,316 pages.
I wonder how many audible hours that would be.
Yeah.
How would you
Be a
look that
lot.
up?
Hundreds.
You would have to just look up each individual book and then add up all
Probably
the
just
hours.
add them up. Yeah.
So for me, I also picked a series. So sorry, Lauren, that you didn't get the Word We Could Do series, but I chose the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, which I took it the same way you guys both did, in that it was not something I was genuinely like afraid to read, but just something that seemed daunting. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with the Wheel of Time series, it's 13 books. They're all exceptionally long. I actually just looked up the page count and couldn't find the exact number, but it's somewhere around 12,000 pages to read the entirety of the series. And so for the longest time, one of my really good friends was reading it, and he was always like, dude, you'd really like these. Like, come on, you'd really like these books. And I was like, oh, I don't know, it's a lot of books to read, and was very hesitant to do it. And I think he was on like book 5 or something when I finally caved and started reading the first one, and I fell in love with it. The characters are amazing. The world is amazing. The like story it sets up and the adventure and the quest that they're going on it's just, I don't have anything bad to say about the first book in the Wheel of Time series, which is The Eye of the World, I guess, for reference. But super intimidated to get into it though, just because of the sheer scope. And it's going to take me a while to read all of them. I recognize that, but I really enjoy it, so I'm glad that I did. All right, next category. Tell me about a book that blew your mind because of how incredible it was.
Yeah, so I picked, and technically I picked the first book in this one because I haven't finished the trilogy, but it's the Davabad. I don't know if is that am I
Yeah,
pronouncing
that's
that,
right.
Michael?
Yeah.
Okay,
On
the
the
Davabad.
audiobook, it said Davabad.
Oh,
There you go.
Davabad. So the Davabad trilogy, and the first book is the City of Brass book. So I'm pretty much basing this off of that, just because I've only read that one so far, and it's by S.A. Chakraborty. So it's a fantasy novel set in the magical Middle Eastern kingdom. It has a kick-ass main character. I loved the fantasy aspect of this book. The characters were all well written. The plot was engaging, and did I mention I love the fantasy aspect of it? I really enjoyed the world that she built, like the Jins and all the magical aspect. I really, really love that. And also, little plug, we did a review of this book. So no shameless plug here. So you should go check it out. Season 2, episode 4, where we talked about it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail since we've already pretty much done that for this book. But I definitely just was just mind blown. I just really, really enjoyed it. And I loved the setting and the fantasy world that she used, and enjoying kind of looking up more about where she got the inspiration from as well for that one.
Well, and Barbara, according to my friend who was the reason that we read this book and added it to our queue for the podcast, the trilogy doesn't, I mean, it just continues to get better from the first. So I think you could safely probably say that the trilogy, even not reading the second 2 books.
So Michael's friend, whoever you are, go ahead and recommend the second book so that we can read it, because I actually enjoyed that fantasy novel and it was good.
I'm pretty sure he would recommend it in a heartbeat because he enjoyed that episode.
Yeah.
So
I plan on reading it on my own if we don't pick it up for the podcast. So I'm down either way.
So I guess if you're sitting here listening to this bonus episode, friend who recommended it, or anybody else who's here right now, and you'd like us to read the next book in the City of Brass or the Davabad trilogy, let us know in the comments on Instagram or Facebook, or send us a message or an email. So for me on this question, I picked The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And for those of you who are familiar with that book, you're probably thinking like, okay, well, of course you were going to enjoy that book, Michael. You love fantasy, you love Brandon Sanderson. It seems obvious, and that's true. But for this particular book, there was so much hype around it when the Stormlight Archive came. It's the first book in the Stormlight Archive. So when this book came out, there's so much hype around it. With anything like that, whether it's like a book, a movie, a video game, a TV show, if there's so much hype before it even happens, I'm always weary that like I'm going to be so excited to read it and then it's not going to live up to the hype, when you get there. And this one absolutely did. It was so good, and the characters were so good. There were some. I actually almost chose this one for a later category, which I'll bring up again later. But it's very good. The characters are amazing. The story is amazing. The world is amazing. I have the rest of the series, that at least the ones that are out up to this point, sitting on my bookshelf, waiting for me to read. So, as you can see in this podcast, we all have a lot of to-be-read books from what we've talked about so far. But yeah, Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson.
That's any reader. The TBR list is just never ending.
Never ending.
My TBR list is never ending. So I just wanted to say before I answer any more questions that this was literally, I wish that I could go back to young Lauren days and document every book that I've read, because I didn't ever do that. I don't have like a running log of books that I've read to where I can like remember to go back, because there's so many books that I've read that have blown my mind, right? Because they've been incredible. And I literally can only remember ones that were either like seared in my brain or that I've read in the last like 4 years. So that being said, for this one, Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman was one of the first ones that came to mind, because I just think it was really well written. And we said that shameless plug here too. I don't remember what the episode number is though. But we did do a review of that one. It was just really well written and wonderful characters, wonderful plot, great fantasy. So that was one. And then the other one was Fight Club. And that one is just incredible. I mean, it's older, but if you've read it, then you know why it would be mind-blowing, as Michael already mentioned. Some of the bigger twists, and then also just the writing. Chuck Palahniuk, I've always loved his writing style. And so, yeah, those are my 2 because I couldn't narrow it down.
Hey, that's fair. We're picking series. I'll let you have 2. Barbara, did you have some, Dad?
Yeah, so the ocean at the end of the lane was season 2, episode 2. So if you guys want to check that out, there it is.
Yes, definitely worth a listen because that was one of my favorite ones that we've done since we started season 2 for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like trying to remember stuff as a kid, I didn't pick a lot of books that I read as a kid because I figured for another bonus episode that I was looking through and deciding on. I already had some of those, and so that's why I left those for a little bit for a different one. But luckily, I'm a hoarder when it comes to books, and I've made my parents keep all my books, so I have most of my books even as a kid. They're all
See, I
yellowed
think
and
that
stuff, but I have
I'm
them.
pretty sure that I have them, but I think that they're like in my parents' attic or their basement somewhere, stored away. So I need to either locate them, but I really wish I would have just created some kind of a list that, I mean, now I keep track of stuff on Goodreads, and that's really helpful. Goodreads, if you want to sponsor us, we're open to that. But yeah, I was having trouble thinking of all of the books that I've read. Like I can think of the plots and the characters, but not the names. And so anyway, this was harder. This book talk challenge was challenging.
Got some ideas spinning now for the theoretical bonus episode Barbara mentioned about talking about books we read as children. But
yeah. It's funny. Like I never understood why people kept book journals, but now like talking about this and doing this kind of stuff, I understand why. And like you mentioned, I kind of wish I would have done that younger.
Yeah.
Like luckily I do remember a lot of stuff, but some books that I haven't, like I read from the library, like those I don't remember because obviously I don't own those books.
Well, and like all the books, because like I know for Michael and I, like we used to spend our whole summers going to the library and we would check out books, and that was like just a big thing that we always did. And I know that I'm sure some of my books have been donated, over the years, and my daughter will definitely be keeping a book journal, and she'll thank me one day for it.
She probably will. I mean, I like Barbara said, and both of you said, actually, I wish that I had done that. We're spoiled today with Goodreads getting to look back and reference things all the time. It would have been nice to have written all that stuff down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't have internet back in our day, so.
Okay, well, we're not that old. We're not
that old. Yes, we did.
Okay, but we had an internet that made dial tone. Like it was like old school.
We didn't have the plethora of websites to find books like we do now. Go. I think that's what key word there.
Barbara says it best.
Amazon was still a small fledgling bookstore.
Hi, I'm Bethany Finger, the host of Prince Kai Fan Pod, a Marissa Meyer Book Club podcast. Join me every week during my read-along journey through all of the books by author Marissa Meyer, one chapter at a time, spoiler-free. Each episode will feature a different guest, new fan art, and laughter and joy through reading. You can find Prince Kai Fan Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other listening platforms. And now, back to the show.
So anyway, moving on to the next category. This one is Tell Me About a Book You Just Want to Escape Into Every Time Reality Gets a Little Too Depressing.
Yes, so this one there was no question that it was going to be Harry Potter. This is also, I even do this with the movies and the audiobooks because I have those as well. Anytime I'm just like needing a book that I know is going to make me happy and that I can fully immerse myself in, I always go back to the Harry Potter series. Yeah, and like I said, the audiobooks are good too. I like both different authors, Jim Dale and what's his face? I can't think of the other one that does it, but
I didn't realize there's two of them.
Yeah, there's
Have
two.
They redone it?
I'm not sure. It's Jim Dale, and I'm gonna have to look it up now. But sometimes I'll just put the audiobooks on, and I'll just go to like a random chapter, and it doesn't matter like anywhere because I've read the series enough. But like I could just pick it up anywhere and read for like an hour and feel better. So
for me on this one, I think Harry Potter would have been a contender for sure for this one, just because of I still enjoy the books, obviously, but some of the childhood memories and nostalgia there too. But that's actually the reason that I went with the choice that I did. So I wrote down the Lord of the Rings series, including The Hobbit. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I realized I should have just probably written down The Hobbit. But in reality, the entirety of it is true as well. So I don't know how many times I've read The Hobbit. I know for a fact that I made my mom read it to me like at least 3 times when I was little. She wanted to read it to me the first time. I wanted her to read it to me the other 2 times. And I've read it even more times after that. I had a copy of the book that completely wore out. I have a copy now that's in the bookcase. It's very nice because it hasn't been read over and over again. But I like Lord of the Rings as well. I've read those more than once, just not as many times. But I picked that because it's really, the books are something that I like to escape into. But I think that I could easily say the world of Lord of the Rings is something that I like to escape into, whether it's reading the books or watching the movies or playing the Lord of the Rings video games. Like it's the, out of any fantasy world that I can think of, it is probably the one I've interacted with most throughout my life in all sorts of different mediums. So for me, it's Middle Earth, the Lord of the Rings.
I do wish that I would have picked those up, but those would fall under the category of books that intimidate me because of their length.
The first time I read Fellowship of the Ring was in 7th grade. I read it. It was my choice for like a book report project in my English class. And I remember this so distinctly because my English teacher didn't want me to read it. Because it was a higher reading level than a 7th grader. And I remember it was the most ridiculous thing. I had to have a parental permission slip. I had to take a thing back and say, Mom, can I read this for a book? And obviously she's always encouraged us to read, so she was down. But I remember being blown away as a 7th grader, but I had to get permission to read a more difficult book for an assignment.
So mine for this one would also be Harry Potter's. Jeez, man, today is just not one of my days.
There's
Harry
more than
Potter
one of them.
series. Spoiler, in the 7th book, there are multiple
Yes.
Harry Potters.
There are.
So I guess I'm not wrong, but I'm also not right.
The Harry Potter multiverse, Barbara. You just started a new thing.
So the Harry Potter series, I'm not going to go into details about the book nor the author because at this point, if you don't know either or you've been living under a rock and I don't even want to know you as a human. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, this is mostly just for nostalgia reasons, just like, both of you guys. It's always been my go-to series. I read this as a kid and it was like one of the first times where I felt like it was okay to be a reader and having friends who liked to talk about books because I was always so obsessed with books as a kid. And this was the first series where I feel like it wasn't just me. Like it was, everyone wanted to talk about it. It was like Harry Potter mania and it was a whole craze and it still is, obviously. And it was nice to finally feel a part of something and not feel like I was kind of a weird kid who just enjoyed reading. So that's why this is my go-to. I can't count how many times I've read and reread all of them. Anytime a new book came out, I would reread it from the first book on. Anytime a new movie came out, I would do the same. And so I've lost count on how many times I've read this. And I'm definitely one of those weirdos who knows quite a bit about Harry Potter, maybe too much, whatever. But this is definitely my go-to one for this one.
All right, guys, final category. Show or tell me about a book that has one of your favorite characters and a character you loathe to your very core. And for me, I know that both of you are going to give me a hard time for this because of how much of a hard time I give you every single episode, which should tell the listeners who listen to every single episode what this is about to be. But I chose Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So not the entire series, but specifically the 5th book. Favorite character of all the Harry Potter books is Sirius Black, but I also have an affinity for Severus Snape. So those are some of my two favorite characters from the entire series. But I specifically chose the 5th book because of Professor Dolores Umbridge. Because when I read this question, that was
This was my first thought too. Same here. I could not, but I was like, I can't use it again.
That's why it's my first thing.
So my thought, I read it, or I thought about this, and I was like, no, I can't do Harry Potter. Barbara and Lauren are going to like crucify me if I do Harry Potter. And so I was like, I was standing in front of our bookcase trying to figure out another book. And I was like, son of a gun, it's this, it has to be this. So Dolores Umbridge, who doesn't hate her? But at the same time, I hate her and love her, right? Because she's such a well-written villain. Like the villain has to be well-written for you to hate her or for you to hate the villain. Like you don't hate a villain who's, just meh. So
I feel like sometimes people hate her more than Lord Voldemort because, like,
I
she's
hate
just,
her more than Lord
you
Voldemort. I
know,
do.
yeah, same here. Like, she's just freaking awful, man.
She's
Because the worst
awful.
part is, like, he's evil and the stereotypical, like, I want to take over the world. She's bad or awful or evil, whatever you want to call it, in the sense that people like this. Like, people like that. This is a normal human trait of just being
and
a crap-tastic person.
The difference between Lovo and Umbridge, though, too, is like at least he has like trauma that kind of triggered some of his badness. Like, we don't get that from her. Like, she's just an awful human being. But anyway,
it takes a lot of loathing of a character to be okay at the end of their arc with a pack of centaurs running off with her into the woods.
Yeah.
I personally wish
how
that it was more
disappointed were you?
gruesome.
I was gonna say, how disappointed. I was gonna say, how disappointed were you that she survived the series? Because I was like, man, like, for someone to like root for someone's death, I feel awful thinking that, but I definitely was rooting for her to just kind of maybe get axed.
But I mean, you got to look at it this way, though. Like, so she was taken by the centaurs to do God knows what, and now she's got to live with like getting her ass beat by a gang of centaurs, and then she's got to live with that trauma for the rest of her life instead of just getting killed. I mean,
I hope she has permanent hoof prints in her face.
She might. Very well might.
Who is your favorite character, Michael? You forgot to say that.
I said it at the beginning. I did. I said,
oh, you're right.
My favorite character of all of the series is Sirius Black and Severus Snape. Yeah,
that's right.
I like them too.
I don't like Snape.
Pour one out for Sirius.
We all have wrong opinions.
Excuse me. I just think that we put him on a pedestal, and if you still think about it, just in case you loved, we're going to go on a Harry Potter tangent. I apologize now, but it's going to happen. It was about to happen. It's a bonus episode. I can say whatever I want. Anyways, I feel like regardless of Snape loving or being obsessed with Harry's mother, Lily, that's not an excuse to treat children the way he treated. I'm sorry, but the fact that you're just a miserable old hag doesn't mean that you can hate up on these children. Like, he was a bully to most of the kids. If you're not a Slytherin, he was awful, and I'm sorry that he gave up his life and he did all this whatever at the end. I get it. Okay, fine. Like, he was fighting the good fight. That doesn't excuse the crap that he pulled on children. These were 11-year-old kids in the first book, and he was awful to them. Awful for no reason. For Harry, okay, fine, I get it. But to everyone else, to poor Neville, he bullied Hermione. He bullied Neville. That is not okay. That's not a good teacher. I'm sorry, it's not. And I
agree with both of you because I hated Snape for the way that he taught and his bullying tactics, but then he did have some redeeming qualities later on that made me hate him less. But I still think that his codependency and toxic obsession with Lily isn't necessarily something to be admired. So when people get married and they have like the always quote, it's just, I mean, it's fine, it's cute, but is it really when you really, really know Harry Potter's books?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So I just want to point out that someone being your favorite character does not mean that you equate like your morals and life decisions with that person. Otherwise, after 13, Lauren would be a serial killer. So,
okay,
well, you said you loved him.
I do. I love the character of Severus Snape. He's a great character. He's very well written.
He is a good character. Arc.
Yes, he's a very good flawed character. But he is flawed, and I hate that some people are like,
Michael. There's the difference right there. So in 13, the serial killer didn't have any flaws. It was just
he was perfect.
he got caught. He had flaws. He's not out there killing people.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. But I digress because it's my turn now. So I'm going to talk. And mine is Harry Potter originally because why wouldn't it be? I mean, my favorite characters and then a character I loathe. I immediately thought of Umbridge. However, I too was like, Lauren, you can't pick Harry Potter for every category. You just can't. And so because of that, I also picked Room. And I would have to look up the author again.
Good book.
If somebody could look up the author while I'm talking, that'd be swell. So I picked Room, and I really, really loved the mother character and then just her strength and her resilience and how she made the worst possible situation, her child, like, yeah, he knew that they were in a bad situation, but I mean, she like made things fun and, you know, made him little games in their room. And so, and then obviously I loathed to my very core the person that was keeping them there. And so it was just, and I mean, that type of a character is going to be one that I loathe every time. But yeah, that was the second one that I thought of after Umbridge.
So it's Emma Donoghue is the author.
Yes. Okay.
I think I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, but it's funny because I thought of both books that you guys picked. I thought of Harry Potter first because that's just mine is one character I hate is Umbridge, just zeroed in on it. So I definitely, but I was like Lauren said, I was like, I do not want to pick Harry Potter again. And then my second one was Room, and I was like, man, that's just, it's such a good book too, but I wanted to go a little bit differently. But yes, that's it. Definitely you. I mean, you have to hate that guy. Like you have to, like everything that he made them go through. And like you said, the mom was super resilient in what she did and the circumstances she was stuck with and how she tried to make everything better for the little boy. Because I mean, you don't even like, because it's in his the little boy's perspective and you don't pick up on the fact that they're locked in, you know, like you kind of like it's a hit, but it's yeah, definitely recommend a book. It's really, really well written. And obviously the movie is good too.
The movie was good, but the book was better.
100%. Always the case. So my pick for this was the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Mayer. And it's just a series that has reimagined classic fairy tales in a futuristic world where humans, androids, and cyborgs coexist. I also forgot, we did an episode on this too. Shameless plug number 3. We did do the first book of the series. I completely forgot because I actually have read this book a few times because of that. So just follows a cast of characters as they try to overthrow the evil Moon Queen. And that's who I absolutely love to hate. I absolutely love to hate Queen Lavanna. I think she's very well written. And I don't want to say more about it just because these two haven't finished the series and I don't want to spoil it for them. But you kind of get her backstory, and it's not a redemption, or not redemption, but like a, what do you call it when you get a backstory of the evil character and then you kind of pity them? Like, what is that called?
It is a redemption arc.
Redemption. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not a redemption arc. It's just explaining certain stuff about her. Like I said, I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to spoil it for you guys. But
were you talking about sympathizing with her?
Yeah, like you don't sympathize with her. You're like, okay, well, I can see why she's freaking crap crazy. Like I you know, like you're like, oh, okay, I too would probably be cray cray, who I hate in that book. I really liked Cinder as a character. I love that she's sarcastic. I feel like she's kind of like me in that sense, and I think her, like, it almost fell into the whole little like, but I'm different trope of a female character, but not really, because she is technically different because she is a cyborg, or she has like cybernetic like arm and the leg and stuff like that, but she wants to be normal. It's not the girl that's like, well, I don't want to fit in and I'm really beautiful and flawless trope. Like that's why I enjoyed her character over some of those characters where it's like, I roll, come on. So that's what I picked since I couldn't pick Harry Potter again.
I mean, you could have, and I half expected one of you to just pick Harry Potter for every single question. What I actually thought you would do is, but it would have made for a bad
podcast, and I don't think anyone wants to hear us ramble. They already hear that enough in our normal podcast.
I was going to say, you already do that, so...
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Well, guys, we made it to the end of another podcast. If you're still here listening with us, thank you so much for listening. We are Badass Literature Society. Just as a reminder, again, there will not be a normal review podcast in the month of August, but we'll be back in September. Hopefully you liked this episode. If you did, let us know. Leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or review. Wherever you listen, it's really important to us. It helps a lot. So if you do like it, please do that. Make sure you're also following us on Instagram and Facebook. In both places, our handle is @BadassLitPod. If you've got a book you'd like us to read or a topic you'd like to see us discuss in one of these bonus episodes, let us know there.
Yeah, let us know if you have any other book talks. Like, we have a few other ones that I think we might be doing. Or apparently we got some ideas, Michael. little brain got some ideas for other ones when we were talking about this. But yeah, if you have cool book talks you want to send to us, we are down.
Yeah, let us know. But like always, we will see you guys in the month of September. But for now, I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Abracadabra.